when I say he's the most hated man in D.C., I mean that as a compliment. I mean that as a statement of admiration. It's Matt Gaetz. Matt, welcome to the program. Makes me really appreciate it. Long time no see, Matt. So, Matt, it's been a week. Give us the update. And do you have? I mean, this is a simple question. Do you have any regrets for what you did now that we're a week into this and there is no speaker? Matt Gaetz, the floor is yours.
My only regret is that the pro tem made the decision that was fully vested in him to call for a week of cooling off. I don't think we should be cooling off. I think we should be heating up the agenda, the appropriations process, and specifically turning up the heat on the United States Senate to take up the bills that we have already passed to fund our veterans, to fund our national defense, to fund, our Department of Homeland Security and the border. Right now, we could be negotiating those things. The Senate has not passed any of those bills. As far as the speaker's race goes, I'm quite pleased with the candidates that we have. Where this would be a more challenging scenarios if we had 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 candidates, each with a small batch of people, and one could see that reasonably taking some weeks to resolve. But Charlie, we have two candidates, Steve Scalise and Jim Jordan. One of those two people is going to get more support than the other, and that will likely be the person that our conference rallies around. I think highly of both men. I've worked with both of them very closely on committees and on regional priorities. I think that either will represent an upgrade at the position, and when I leave this discussion, we're going to some small group meetings where both Mr. Scalise and Mr. Jordan will lay out their vision on spending. That's something very important to me, because if we get the rest of this right, but we don't resolve the fact that we're facing a $2.2 trillion annual deficit, then I fear that we'll lose this great country.
Everybody, email us your thoughts and your questions you want me to ask Congressman Gaetz. So we're on Team Jim Jordan all the way. Matt, who are you supporting in the speaker's race?
Well, I'm an undecided voter right now. I've said it's an embarrassment of riches that we've got someone like a Jim Jordan, who is our most talented, our hardest working member, someone who I personally nominated in January. And Steve Scalise is a guy who's demonstrated a tremendous amount of grit. He's widely respected among every facet of the conference. And I think either of these men would be able to bring us together. Ultimately, that has to be toward a specific vision, though. I think too often in Washington, it's about personality or fundraising or who's done what favor for whom. And so, while I have great personal affection for both of these folks, my final decision is going to be driven by their vision on budgeting and then really reining in this government, because you are rightly critical of Republicans who just put on a big performance in committee, but then at the end of the day, still send the check to operationalize a government that in many instances has been turned against the people. So I think we have to use that power of the purse effectively. And if we do so, we can leverage 1/2 of 1/3 of government. Kevin McCarthy never really understood leverage. I think we've got to see how the plan will work under the upgrades in Scalise or Jordan.
If I were to guess, I think you're going to be more in the Jordan camp than the Scalise camp, but I don't want to speak for you. Matt, let's talk timeline. We're a week into this. When are we going to start to see some votes? Not just, heated sessions and the, closed doors and, fist fights that are going to break out. Come on, we got to get a speaker here. We got to raise the $300 million. And is there any, read us into this kind of resurgence where McCarthy's going to make another go at the whole ball game here? Timeline and McCarthy. Matt Gaetz, respond.
Sure. I suspect that we'll have our first votes on Wednesday morning, tomorrow morning. And if someone has 50% plus one, I think that the conference will very quickly rally around that person, or if it's close to that. So we'll have a secret ballot. We'll determine who won that secret ballot. And I wish it were more action on the floor, like the country got to see during the last speaker contest, where different people could make nominating speeches and you would see publicly how people were voting. I think a majority of our conference is instead going to want to resolve this behind closed doors so as to not have that public display. I actually don't think that made us weaker. I think that made us stronger because the country tuned into what we were fighting for and who we were fighting for and how we thought we could get from point A to point B. But I'm not in the majority on that question. So it could be as early as Wednesday. I don't think that it'll last into next week. And if there are, 4, 5, 10, or 12 people that will only vote for Kevin McCarthy, even though he's not a candidate and has no path to regain the position, that would be a real sign of stubbornness, not a collective effort to unify and go forward with a plan.
So, Matt, something that I think is getting misrepresented here. Some people say, we want to get an Israel aid package passed quickly, and because of that, we need a speaker. So two different things there. But Matt, whether it be border security or if our country got attacked, the House can still pass legislation without a speaker. You could do a single resolution. You can introduce up or down vote. The Speaker pro tem can introduce legislation. So what I'm trying to get at, Matt, is that we shouldn't be overly pressured into conceding our principles because of basically a narrative of misinformation. Is that correct, Matt Gaetz?
I think that's largely right, Charlie. And while we're horrified at what's going on right now in Israel, and we understand that Israel has a right to defend itself and is indeed doing so, the observations of Marco Rubio are pretty dispositive here. He laid out how under our current laws, there is all of the authority the President of the United States needs to be able to provide any additional supplemental aid to Israel. And keep in mind, Israel is on a $3.8 billion auto pay as the consequence of good legislation that Marco Rubio passed. And so I think that we're fine in terms of meeting the needs at Israel. Of course, we want the border to be more reflective of what the American people want, but we can achieve that objective by demanding the Senate take up and pass our legislation to fund the border with policy demands that people not be just released indiscriminately into the country. They have to be detained or removed if they are not here lawfully. And so that is a really important asylum change that we're fighting for there. But we should not buy into the misinformation that Congress can do nothing. I mean, just today I was getting briefings on what's going on in the Middle East. Tomorrow morning, we've got a classified briefing set for all the members. So work is still being done here. I do think we need to get a speaker quickly, but it is not worth sacrificing our principles. So
there's this whisper campaign that's going on here, Matt, I'm going to read this article here from Politico.com. McCarthy loyalists vow to draw out painful speakership battle. So they actually might want to turn this into a spectacle. As far as the news with Israel, do you think that changes the calculation in that regard? And how will you respond tactically to moderates that now want to exact revenge by basically drawing this out into a long, long process?
Well, if moderates want to help Israel, as I believe they do and as I want to do, that would be very self-defeating to say that just for the sake of eulogizing whatever's left of Kevin McCarthy, that we want to continue to vote for him in the absence of any belief that he could govern the House of Representatives. What I would say is that Kevin McCarthy has had 9 months to lead the House of Representatives, and we didn't really deliver on anything substantive for the American people. All we did was advance Joe Biden's spending and Nancy Pelosi's policy priorities while underwriting the debt for all of it. We've not even sent a subpoena to Hunter Biden. So we've had a pretty large sample size of the Kevin McCarthy experience. And if there's a small group of moderates who want to just deny the House of Representatives a speaker with no end game, I think their constituents will put pressure on them. I've had every talking head on Fox News and even other conservative media outlets critical of me, and yet the recent CBS poll that came out showed that 60% of Americans and 54% of identified conservatives support the ouster of Kevin McCarthy. Matter of fact, my resolution vacating Kevin McCarthy may be the most popular thing that the House of Representatives has passed that's actually gotten enacted. I mean, it's certainly more popular than the debt limit deal and the continuing resolutions. So I think that we've got an opportunity to come together. We should seize that opportunity, and we should really count our blessings that we've got people like Jim Jordan and Steve Scalise willing to step up and take on this challenge.
Everybody, you can email us your questions here, freedom@charliekirk.com for Matt Gaetz. Here's one question we received from one of our listeners, Matt. They say, Matt, I'm with you 100%. How are you handling all of the vicious attacks? Can you read us into how they are retaliating? Matt, can you add some context to that? Because, you don't aim for the king, take out the king, catch the car, and then go back to your district and expect parades and beautiful commercials, with you and your wife. Has the regime come after you? What can you share?
Yeah, there are some outside dark money groups that are attacking me in my district, and there are threats of retaliation, expulsion, weaponizing the ethics process to try to force me out of the United States Congress. What I can assure the American people is that every day I am here, I will fight for you. And if demanding that we follow the law or pass a budget draws me ire or negative attacks, I am built for the battle. I have faced down tougher things than a few nasty grams from Grover Norquist. So I'm very proud of the work we've done, but I don't believe the job is over. We are still in this fight to ensure that the American people are represented first and foremost in the thoughts and minds of our leadership as we go to battle the Biden administration and the Chuck Schumer-controlled Senate. So, yeah, there have been a few terse words and even terser actions, but it's not something that I let get me down. I'm a pretty happy warrior.
So Matt, in closing here, we know that if this is successful, we need to keep the House. And so talk about what that plan will be. And Matt, about a minute remaining, we also have this continuing resolution that is just coming up. You mentioned this on the horizon. If you guys leave D.C. again, I'm gonna throw my computer at the wall. I mean, you guys get more vacation, not you. I mean, it's the speaker that decides this. What's the 30-day marching plan? How can the grassroots help you, Matt Gaetz?
Yeah, we need to demand that the United States Senate pass single-subject spending bills. We've passed enough single-subject spending bills to fund 70% of the government. We've got the remaining to get to, and there's some tough cuts that we had some Midwestern farmers that weren't real thrilled about. So we've got to work with them. They're our team members and our colleagues, and we've got to get the spending cuts to save the dollar. We've got to get the schedule on track, which I believe we can meet. I mean, when we had the political gun to McCarthy's head, we got 4 single-subject spending bills on the floor in a week. So we need productivity like that. I'm with you. We need to get rid of the French work week and embrace the vigor that the challenge before us demands.
Spending cuts to save the dollar. I like that a lot. Matt, you did something that no one in American history has ever done. The regime is going to come barking at you and try to take you out. I could tell you the American grassroots are behind you. I pray that your plan gives us a Speaker Jim Jordan, and we will wait expectantly. Matt, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Charlie.